Welcome back to Man Down Sports. As you can see from the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about the Phoenix Suns and super teams in general and what a super team is, the definition of a super team. I'm going to give you my definition of it, and I'm going to go down some other definitions that I heard around, the YouTube world and in the media and stuff like that. They really don't make sense. I'm going to let you know why it don't make sense. I'm going to explain to you why most people and the mainstream definition of a super team really doesn't stack up, really doesn't make sense. And I'm going to give you my definition, and we're going to apply it across the board to see if it makes sense when we actually compare my definition and bounce that off to teams that we know for a fact was undoubtedly a super team, right? So we're going to get it through all that, man. But before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. I don't know if y'all heard that, but my glasses was making a bunch of noise. But make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the thumbs up as well. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you do that. That helps the channel. And make sure you leave comments in the comment section, man, because we want to hear exactly what your thoughts are. Your personal thoughts and what your opinions is, or base your thoughts based on my opinions as well. But without further ado, let's get into this super team definition and why it's such a big thing all of a sudden again this season in the NBA. And it's because the recent player movements and trades of Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns, the trade of Dame Lillard going to Milwaukee, and even Drew Holiday going to the Boston Celtics. Now people has been, bringing up this super team discussion again, that we, put to rest. And even the NBA is making steps and putting efforts toward not allowing or making it harder for a team to even build a super team or have that many marquee guys on one squad and having people teaming up. They're trying to discourage that and making it harder. And yet here we are again. We got three teams, two in the East, one in the West, where people are discussing, is this a super team or not? One of the definitions I heard, I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard someone say that any team that has three all-stars on it is a super team. The problem with that is that it sounds cool, because definitely a super team will have three all-stars on it, because if you look at like the Miami Heat big three, that was definitely a super team. That had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, right? Had those on their team. So obviously those three guys are all-stars. So on the surface, it looks like that definition might fly. A team with three all-stars on it is a super team, until you actually start going below the surface and digging a little bit and applying it across the board. Any definition that can't be applied across the board and be true majority of the time, with few exceptions, like you're going to have exceptions to every rule, right? So if you make a rule and say, man, when this happens, then then it means this, right? So when you have a rule like that, you can't go around and find just multiple exceptions and then start moving the goalposts to kind of fit your definition. And that's what happens when you use the three all-star definition. Because then you have to go to like, well, I remember one year the Atlanta Hawks had three all-stars, maybe even had four, right? But they definitely had three. I think it was Joe Johnson, Cal Korver, and Jeff Teague all made all-star one year, and Paul Millsap might have been a fourth. I can't remember. So they definitely had three all-stars on one squad, the Atlanta Hawks. But no one considered that a super team, and they even performed well. They even had a good season with that team and had a high playoff ranking. And we know, no one looked at it as a super team. It was lacking something. They had three all-stars, but it was definitely lacking something, right? You can have three all-stars and none of them be superstars, which is what I get to in a minute. But you got three all-stars, no superstars. So you're definitely not a super team, right? And you would think, okay, well, that's one exception. But then you go to the Detroit Pistons, and they had three all-stars one year. Both Wallace brothers and Chauncey Billups. They might have had four. They might have had both Wallace boys, Rip Hamilton and Chauncey. right? And in their mind, they felt like they could have had 5 All-Stars if you include Tayshaun Prince, right? So that team definitely had 3 All-Stars. Was not a super team, right? Lacking something. Rip wasn't a superstar. Billups wasn't a superstar. Tayshaun wasn't a superstar, and Ben Wallace definitely wasn't a superstar. Rasheed Wallace might have been the only person that might fit the criteria of a superstar. In my opinion, I think he was a superstar. However, he scaled this game back a whole lot playing with Detroit. You seen more of his game when he was with Portland. A little bit when he was with the Bullets, just a little bit, but he was a young buck playing behind Juwan Howard and Chris Webber, so you didn't see much of him. But when he went to Portland, you seen most of his game, which he put on the shelf and scaled back once he went to Detroit, and for the sake of playing lockdown defense, playing in the system, and only using his offensive arsenal when absolutely needed, which is the same thing a lot of bigs did back then. Tim Duncan did it. He scaled this game back. He could have been a 30-point points per game scorer most of his career if he wanted to, but he really played in the system where Tony Parker or whatever point guard that was controlling the flow of the offense was controlling it, getting their shots, and a lot of ball movement. And then Ginobili was doing this thing, so, and then when Kawhi was coming of age, it was even more scaled back. So Tim Duncan was another big that did that, and Chris Webber to a certain degree as well. So and Garnett did it when he showed up with Boston. He kind of scaled this game back. So you can look at a superstar and know when it's a superstar, and I give you my definition of a superstar too. But we can look at Rasheed Wallace and know he had superstar game when he scaled it back. But that's one superstar, right? One superstar don't make a super team, right? So that all-star definition under any level of scrutiny falls by the wayside. Then you got the definition of any team that has 3 Hall of Famers on it is a super team. And that falls apart even faster than the 3 All-Star definition, right? Any team with 3 Hall of Famers, you can make Hall of Fame. Like Vlade Divac make Hall of Fame. Make Hall of Fame, right? So you can make Hall of Fame without being this superstar player. Dennis Rodman made Hall of Fame. He's just a rebounder and defender. Not going to get you points, but you can get that from Andre Drummond. You can get defense and rebounding from Andre Drummond if he's not going to score, right? So you can make Hall of Fame by just being a rebounder. You can make Hall of Fame by just being a defender like Ben Wallace, but and you can still go back to the Detroit Pistons team, and you might have, well, I doubt it. They might let Ben Wallace in. That's I'm not sure if anybody else on that team would get in, but 3 Hall of Famers on one team does not make a super team. The San Antonio Spurs definitely have 3 Hall of Famers. They had Tim Duncan, Ginobili, Tony Parker. It's not a super team. Right? It's a very good team, and the reason why they're so good is because they play really good basketball and really good defense. They play in a great system, right? They have a great philosophy. They do have one superstar in Tim Duncan, right? But that team was orchestrated or constructed well, and they perform well. You can perform super as a team. That doesn't make you a super team, though. Average teams can perform super. I've seen so many years back in the 90s when the Princeton offense first really got popular, and people were afraid to play Princeton in the NCAA tournament. I was a fan of the Tar Heels back then. I sat and watched a Tar Heel team that had so many NBA players on it just get ran out of the gym by Princeton, who had 0 NBA players. Right, that Princeton offense was a killer. They performed very well in that offense. A lot of back cuts, a lot of movement, player movement, ball movement, a lot of patience on offense. No rush shots, no hero ball. They just beat you fundamentally. That Princeton offense was killer, right? So teams that perform great don't make you a super team, and the Spurs is someone who performed great. The Warriors, who won 73 games in the regular season, they had one superstar in Steph and on that team, and if You want to, if you want to count Clay as a superstar, fine, right? 2 superstars, right? But they definitely had a lot of Hall of Famers. Like Draymond will make Hall of Fame. Clay will make it, definitely Steph. So that's 3 Hall of Famers. 3 Hall of Famers does not mean you have a super team. That 73-9 was not a super team. They performed super because they played great offense and great defense. They had a great system. They didn't have a lot of hero ball, just like that Princeton offense. They performed great. They performed super, but they only had 1 superstar, 2 if you count Clay. It's not a super team. So the all-star definition doesn't withstand scrutiny. The Hall of Fame definition doesn't withstand scrutiny. So what is my definition and my criteria of a super team in the NBA? Well, the key word in the word super team is super. So all stars are not all superstars. You can go to the All-Star game last year, 12 players on each team, 24 players out of the NBA. All 24 of those players are not superstars. And why is that important? Is because just because you have an all-star don't mean you have a superstar, and you need superstars to create a super team. You can't create a super team with all-stars. All Hall of Famers are not superstars. Dennis Rodman is in the Hall of Fame. Vlade Divac is in the Hall of Fame. Yao Ming is in the Hall of Fame. Sabonis is in the Hall of Fame. It's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame. Iguodala might get in the Hall of Fame. Draymond might get in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame. All Hall of Famers are not superstars. Tony Parker would get in the Hall of Fame. He might be already in there. All Hall of Famers are not superstars, right? But all superstars are superstars. So every superstar that's a superstar is a superstar, right? So all-stars and Hall of Famers, we can't use that as a threshold for super teams, but superstars is what we use as a threshold. That's the criteria for super teams. Super teams are made up by superstars, right? So now that we got that out of the way, super team, superstars. Now, what makes a super team a super team is when they have abundance of superstars, and they're overflowing with superstars, and so to know when they're overflowing with superstars is when we know what the normal or what the norm is for a team to have a superstar without being a super team. And we know that having 2 superstars is normal in the NBA. Shaq and Kobe, Jordan and Pippen, Penny and Shaq, Stockton Malone, Nash, Dirk. The list goes on of dynamic duos. Back when Blake was in his prime, maybe Blake, CP3, maybe Nash, Stoudemire, maybe Kobe, Gasol. Like, that's normal. 2 is normal. We've seen 2 superstars on the squad so many times, and that's normal. What makes it not normal and what gives you an advantage is when you get 3 superstars on the team, because now you're doing something that is not easily done. The desire to do it is not even there, because most superstars want their own squad. All right. So the desire to do it is not even really there. And it's only about 10 to 12 of these guys in the entire NBA. Every team can't have a superstar. If that's 30 teams, maybe 32. I don't know. I get it mixed up with the NFL, which one got 30, which one got 32. But let's say it's 30 teams. There's not 30 superstars in the NBA, so every team's not going to have one. So some teams are going to have to compete. If they want to contend, they're going to have to compete without having a superstar. You might can have an all-star, or you might can just have fringe all-stars, or you got no all-stars and no player that's even close to even making an all-star. So you're going to have to play really good basketball, really good defense with that team, right? So everybody can't have an all-star, but definitely everybody can't have a superstar, because it's only 10 to 12 of those guys. Those are the top top percent of the league. These are players that can carry a team as a number one option and carry that team to success. They don't have to win, because it's very hard to win by yourself. You need help. But a superstar, just by adding that superstar to that team, you know, within 1 or 2 years, you should have that team rocking and rolling and performing, right? While we're trying to build around you, right? A superstar can do that. A superstar can successfully carry a team in a franchise as the number one option, right? That's why guys like Dennis Rodman and Ben Wallace would never be considered a superstar, because I can't take that player and say, you're the best player on my team, you're the number one, and we're going to you for points, and then we're going to build around you. You can't do that. Those are guys that are complementary players to a superstar. Dennis Rodman has to be attached to a superstar. He had to be attached to Jordan, or attached to David Robinson, or attached to Isaiah Thomas. That's not a guy that can be the Isaiah Thomas or the Hakeem, because superstars are relied upon for points and leadership and all of that, right? You got to have it here, and in your skill set, right? So those are superstars. It's only 10 of those guys, maybe 12, right? So the first part of having a super team is having a plethora of superstars, which is 3. If you got 3 of those guys and there's only 10, right, that means that your team has an advantage, and there's probably not another team out there that has that same advantage. You know, I haven't seen too many opportunities or too many times where the NBA had 10 superstars and 6 of them was just on 2 teams, right? I think one of those times may have been, if you want to consider the end of the Boston Big Three, consider them as still as superstars. I think they were past their prime. But when they first got to Boston, they definitely was in their prime. And then KG hurt his knee, and that took him out of his prime very quickly, right? And then the Miami Heat, a Big Three form, right? So if there was only 10 superstars in that league at that time, 3 of them was in Miami, 3 of them was in Boston. Kobe was in LA. That's 7, right? It's only 2 or 3 more left to spread around the league. So that's why 3 gives you an advantage. But if it's one superstar on every team, and then you building it with maybe an all-star and maybe some role players, then you could spread that out amongst probably all the playoff teams. If all the playoff teams had one superstar, that's 10, about 10 or 12. Let's say 12. You got 12 teams with one superstar. Okay, let's see which one of us is better this year. Let's go ahead and see what one of us is better. But when one of those superstars decide, I'm gonna take that one, and we're gonna join a team, now I got 3, where other teams only really have 1, possibly 2 if they're lucky, right? So that gives you a real clear advantage when you have a super team. So the first part, superstars that are in my definition of a superstar is a player who is a number one option, and who has proven they can carry a team as a number one option, right? And the second part of that is they have to still be in their prime, right? It doesn't matter if I take Karl Malone, who once was a superstar, but now he's 40 and past his prime, and throw him on the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, and then I say that's a super team because Karl Malone used to be a superstar. No, his name is still a superstar. His game is not. He's past his prime. It's very important. If you're before your prime, like if you're a rookie, like you look at Oklahoma City Thunder when they had Harden, Westbrook, and Kevin Durant. Harden and Westbrook was 22 and before their prime, right? They wasn't superstar players. Harden wasn't even an all-star, right? So we can't count that as a superstar type of player. That was way before their prime. I think Kevin Durant can be counted as a superstar. Some guys are just like that. I don't think Westbrook was ever a superstar. Averaging triple-double was great. I don't count him as a superstar. He's never been able to carry a team as a number one successfully, right? I don't, not over a extended period of time, right? So I don't count Westbrook as a superstar. Harden, yes, in Houston, he was a superstar, but in OKC, he was before his prime. So you have to be in your prime. You can't be before it or past it. And Karl Malone was past his prime. Harden was before his prime in OKC, so I wouldn't count those. So a super team, by my definition, is a team with 3 or more prime superstars who are proven number ones on one team. That is a super team to me. So with that being said, do I count this year's Phoenix Suns as a super team? I do not. But if you count, because I do count Booker as a prime superstar entering his prime, or just at the beginning of his prime. He's there. He's in his prime. He's a superstar. Kevin Durant for sure is a superstar. Is he past his prime? What is he, 35? I would say no. I would say he's still a superstar in his prime. I would count him. Now, Bradley Beal, is he in his prime? Yes, he's in his prime. Is he a superstar? No, not in my opinion. I think he's very close. I think he's as close to a superstar as Clay is, right? But some people will count that Golden State Warriors team as a super team, and I won't argue with you, right? That means that your definition of a superstar, Clay meets that criteria. Even though my definition is a proven number one, you have to prove that you are capable of carrying a team as a number one, and Clay hasn't even had the opportunity to prove that. Could Clay leave Golden State and get his own team? Could he go to Charlotte and be the best player and lead them to success like Steph has done with Golden State? If he can, he's a superstar. If you think he can, even though you haven't seen it, he hasn't proven it, fine. Then count Golden State as a super team. I won't argue with you. I even count it as a super team because I think Clay is so daggone close to being a superstar. Sure, let's count him. Right, but technically, by my definition, no. Right, there was a very great team because they played great. They played super, and they had the second best player in the league, and Durant, maybe even the first best player, depending on where you stack him up with LeBron James, and Steph was probably the third best player. So it might have been KD, LeBron, Steph, and they had 2 of those on the same team. So whatever Clay lacks at being a superstar, having 2 top 3 players on that squad in a great offense and so much of that shooting on that offense, yeah, I mean, sure, let's count it, right? So the Phoenix Suns is just that close because Bradley Beal, has he proven that he can carry a team successfully as a number one? He failed miserably in Washington. So I don't count him as a superstar. I don't think he's a superstar. I think he's very close. I think he's a perennial all-star, but he's not a superstar. So I wouldn't count this as a super team. However, this team got a lot of potential. And then we apply my definition across the board, and we go to Milwaukee, 3 prime superstars on one team. Dame's a superstar. Giannis is a superstar. You got a dynamic duo. Middleton is not a superstar. Very easily, he's not a superstar. Do they have a super team in Milwaukee? No. We go to Boston. Do they have 3 prime superstars on one squad? Tatum's a superstar. I don't think Jaylen Brown is a superstar, but he's as close as Bill and Clay is. Right? He's as close as Bill as Clay is. So if I wanted to, and plus the fact he hasn't proven it, he hasn't been anywhere as a number one and shown what he could do as a number one and showing he can carry it successfully. So if I really wanted to count Jaylen Brown as a superstar, fine. So you got 2. Jrue Holiday is not a superstar. Porzingis is not a superstar. So no, Boston don't have a super team either. But these guys are very close. Phoenix is very close to a super team. Boston, I think, is very close because they got 2 guys like, Porzingis was the unicorn. He was on his way. He could have been a superstar. He was almost, he's got the game. He could have been a superstar. It's just something missing, right? He can't carry a team as a number one. Superstars can carry a team as a number one, right? That's the main thing about superstars. You can't be a superstar and then tell me you can't carry this team as a number one. No, that's not a superstar. Right? That's a good player. Sometimes even a great player, not a superstar. Superstars are different. All right. It's only about 10 of those guys. And listening to, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, Pat Bell podcast, and he was talking to Spencer Dinwiddie, and they said, man, I think it's only 5 superstars in the league. Then he started counting, and then they got up to like 7 or 8. So like 7 or 8. So In the league today, guys that I think that can carry a team as a number one and who have proven that they could successfully, Kawhi, LeBron, even though LeBron's past his prime, so he wouldn't contribute to a super team because he's past his prime. But you can still be a superstar, but be past your prime. That's what not Wilt, but that's what Kareem was when he was playing with Magic in LA. He was past his prime. He was still a superstar, right? But LeBron, Kawhi, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Devin Booker, Luka, Jokic, Embiid, Kyrie, Dame Lillard, that's 10. Then it gets fidgety if you want to include Anthony Davis, Ja Morant. Did I say Giannis? I hope I said Giannis, and Giannis as well. Giannis is in there, right? But those are the one. Those are it. And some people wouldn't even include AD. Some people wouldn't include Ja Morant. I wouldn't include Ja Morant. Right, those are superstars, but just because your name is huge and you might have some highlights and you're popular like Zion or something like that, like people are throwing superstar around so easily, and it gives me an idea of why they're throwing the term super team around so easily. If you were willing to say that Ja Morant and Zion Williamson are superstars, then I understand why you think every team that plays well is a super team. Or every team that got a couple of all-stars is a super team, because you don't really have a criteria. You just throwing stuff out there, right? So that's all I wanted to say, man. I wanted to get on here and definitely nail that to the wall of what a super team really is. We don't have one currently in the league. The Phoenix Suns are close. Let's just hope that they can perform like that and get something out of this season. They got a lot of death. So, but yeah, until next time, I catch you on the next episode.